very sorry to have interrupted you, Rebecca.
Not at all. That's an important point. Appreciate it. Anyway, so the project that we're working on kind of came about from two different points of view. One, we know that adults don't have the digital literacy and the numeracy skills that they need to be successful, both from an individual point of view and from a kind of a full citizenry point of view. We also know that the research in this area is relatively limited. We've done a scan of the field and we found that there is actually really not that much about in the research to help us understand the best practices to support adult learners in numeracy and digital literacy. So we came up with this project. And Carolyn, can you go to the next slide for me? The idea with the project is that we want to do two different things. One, we're developing a technology-based course that can be implemented online or in blended formats, with the idea of, again, supporting adult numeracy and digital literacy. But we also want to have the professional development that goes along with that to really support the instructors to change their practice or improve their practice to effectively teach the course and to support their learners. And so what we're doing is we're kind of doing three different parts of this project. Carolyn, can you go to the next slide for us? It's a 5-year project, and we've got multiple time periods where we're developing the course and the professional development. We're trying it out, and then we're improving it, and then we're trying it again. So we've got the pink parts there indicate the 3 different phases of kind of development and testing that we're doing with the course and the professional development. Right now, we're starting up the recruitment for the usability testing that will happen in spring. And then we're going to do some improvement based on what we learned from the folks that are part of that work. And then we're going to do a feasibility study, and after that, an impact study to really look at kind of overall what the impact is on teachers and students from this work. I go ahead to the next slide, Carolyn. We have spent a significant amount of time, like I said, looking at the literature, talking with folks in Pennsylvania to understand kind of the current conditions in adult numeracy. And we're developing the course based on the input that we've received from talking with folks, doing the work, previous work we've done with the Carnegie Math Pathways. And what we've come up with is a course that looks something like this. And so this is the one that we're going to try out first. Again, we're going to learn what's working and what's not working from this first part of the usability study and then revise it. But so far, we've got a course that looks like it's about 10 weeks long. It's about 3 90-minute learning cycles per week. It involves both synchronous and asynchronous work, 45 course hours total, and about 4.5 hours of work for students per week. The topics that we've settled on in the adult numeracy area are those that you see on the right-hand side. And again, we've come up with those based on the conversations that we've had with current instructors working in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. And again, we've heard that this may look like a lot, and it may be a lot. And so again, that's one of the things we're going to be trying to figure out what can people get through in a 10-week period, and what makes sense for a course to support adult learners. Can you go to the next one, Carolyn? So like I said, there's professional learning support that goes along with this. And we're going to be arranging the professional learning support slightly differently for each one of the 3 different testing periods that it looks like. But ultimately, for the impact study, it's going to look like a 2-day institute where we're going to provide some training. There's going to be online seminars. There's going to be some coaching that goes along with that. And the professional development itself is really going to focus on a couple of different things. It's going to focus on supporting content knowledge. It's going to focus on facilitating rich and high cognitive demand math tasks, routines that support non-native speakers of English, and helping students become familiar with the platform. And again, like I said, there's going to be some online coaching that's going to be involved as well. And that's really going to be kind of more in the moment needs that instructors are having as they're going through the work. Go to the next one for me, Carolyn. So this will give you a sense about kind of what it will mean for an instructor and a student to take part in the study that we're looking at. Um, one thing that we certainly want to do, this is like real-time testing. So we want to see what happens when instructors go through actually teaching the 10-week course and completing the corresponding professional development. We're really kind of wanting to learn from their real experiences. We're going to ask the instructors to distribute some study materials for us, including things like consent forms, and helping us figure out who might take part in some focus groups. We would love to interview the instructors about twice during the 10-week course to really understand your experience as you're going through the course. We'd love to observe a class so that we can kind of see what it's like in real time. And then we're developing a little 3 to 5 question log that we would hope the instructors could complete at the end of each week for about a total of 10 logs. Again, those are just so we can kind of get some more immediate feedback on what's going well and not what's not going well. And then from the student point of view, we know these are busy people, so we want to really limit the burden on them as much as possible. We'd love them to participate in a classroom observation, do a focus group with us, and maybe some think aloud interviews as well. There's certainly we want to acknowledge that this is taking up some significant amount of your time. So we would be supporting a stipend for teachers to participate in $500, supporting students to participate in the focus groups and the interviews as well. We hope the idea here is, again, to both inform our study, but hopefully contribute to students' learning and your learning as well, with the idea that we're all learning from each other and you guys could all learn from your peers. So anyway, that's all. I'm going to stop there. I would love to take any questions that you all might have. Feel free to unmute yourself, or presumably there's a chat that I can find on Teams. But if you have any questions, please speak up.
So I can monitor the chat for you, Rebecca.
Appreciate that.
There's nothing in it currently.
Okay.
I believe Carolyn has put some information in the chat.
That's right.
For you all to look at.
So basically, that's the end of our spiel. So if you have any questions or you want more information, please reach out to Carolyn or me. I'm rperry@wested.org. Carolyn's email is up there. We do have, Carolyn did chat the interest form. If you are interested in participating in this, we'd love to have you, regardless of what your experience is so far, or where you are, or what you're thinking. We're just taking all comers right now just to see who might be interested. So I'm going to stop there. I know you have a busy agenda. Christine, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, but we have a little more time. If anybody has any questions they want to ask now, feel free to unmute yourself. And while we have Rebecca and Carolyn on the line.
Just Christine, just one question. Can you just repeat the title again? I got adult numeracy, and what was the rest of it? The project?
In the digital era.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Rebecca. This is Sharon from York. I assume that this course includes the CCRS math standards and all those.
Correct. That is absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then does it incorporate, I mean, we've been working with Teaching Skills That Matter format through our one of our staff members as being a trainer and so on. Is there anything like that built into this course, or is it strictly just have to see it?
Well, so all that stuff, all the teaching skills that matter, all the ANI 2.0 work that we've done is all going to inform the course development. So while it may not follow that other format exactly, it's definitely been informed by it. Hopefully that helps.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to thank you both for coming and joining us today. I hope that we're mostly administrators and professional developers on this call. So I'm hoping some of you are thinking about how this might be useful for your program, and you might have a teacher in mind who you think could maybe participate in this study. And You can always contact me if you have some questions or go directly to Rebecca and Carolyn. So I want to thank you for coming today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tara Williams from the Governor's Policy Office. And she's going to start our presentation on the Digital Equity Project. And Tara, I think you can share your screen at any time.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do that. So give me just a minute here.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. I seem to have lost again my my Teams window, but I will find that in a second. Hold on just a sec.
So I don't know if Carolyn and Rebecca are still here, but if you are, you can see that even those of us that use Teams all the time still sometimes struggle a little.
It's so true. Okay, got it. Does it look good, Christine? Good to go?
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. We are really excited to share the Pennsylvania plan to advance digital skills. Since, as was just mentioned in the last presentation, we know this is such a key topic in the everyday lives of Pennsylvanians, and we know that you all play such a central role to support people in gaining the skills they need. So our digital skills state team, which you can see listed here, is glad to be here. Most of us are on the call today to share the plan that was developed over the past year, and also to focus specifically on a new mapping resource that we hope is helpful for people to connect with digital skills training. We're going to fly through some of the slides, but we're happy to share this presentation if you don't have it already, as well as the full state plan that you can look at your leisure after the presentation. Okay, so I don't think I have to tell this group. We all know that having the skills to be able to use technology is now a need in our everyday lives, from education and employment to accessing healthcare and the general activities that keep us connected to each other and the world around us. Despite the importance of digital skills, however, especially when we look at what's needed for workforce participation, the National Skills Coalition found that nearly 1 in 3 workers have few or no digital skills, and many of these workers are actually responsible for supervising other people. We also see that the lower a person's digital skills are, the lower their earnings tend to be. So with those things in mind, the importance of having an intentional plan to increase digital skills across the state is an essential piece of closing equity gaps and ensuring people can participate in these daily activities. With that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Erin Donahoe from the Department of Education Policy Office to share some guiding pieces of the plan.
Thanks, Tara. And thanks, Christine, and everyone for inviting us to speak with you today. Well, as you noticed from the slide, we're covering several agencies, and I'm also from the Department of Education along with Christine. And we started, as Tara said, by doing a lot of research. From the data that we found, we came up with our vision based on, what do we know from our experience, our work, and our research. So we set a time frame. We said we want to put our vision within 5 years. We set our population. Our population is all Pennsylvanians. This is relevant, pardon me, to everyone. And we also put some parameters around the vision, like we're not just talking about having specific skills of being able to do something, we're also talking about the skill of continuous learning. So our vision for digital literacy in Pennsylvania is that people won't just learn how to do discrete tasks, they'll also learn how to continue to learn as technology evolves, which is something that we all do and have to do for our work. We all evolve to work on teams, and we're still evolving. We also want to address confident use and safe use of technology. So there are a lot of components to our vision. So I'm going to go from broad to narrow here. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about how we narrowed down our vision. Did a little more research, looked at what are the most urgent needs, and based on the urgent needs, we said to accomplish that vision in 5 years, let's focus for now on a couple specific things. First of all, we're going to narrow that population focus to the working age population. This is where our agencies work. This has to do with the focus of the grant being a workforce-focused grant. And this is also a population that's supporting the young, and the aging populations. So if we can help people use technology and use digital skills in their work and advance their careers, we're having a multiplier effect on the whole population. We also want to focus on foundational digital literacy. Foundational digital literacy being those basic skills of inputting information to a computer or using a job application that's required in your work. We'll go ahead and talk about how we zoomed in from those recommendations on what our specific policy goals are. And I'm going to give it back to Tara because she has been our leader from the governor's office, making sure that these things happen.
Thanks so much, Erin. Okay, so using the vision and those recommendations, we landed on 5 broad goals, and they have a few sub-goals under each. Goal 1 is to elevate and share the digital skills priorities across system partners. We want to get this plan and its accompanying resources out to our partner networks to work on a collective approach. Goal 2 is to ensure that we have training options readily available and accessible to people. Goal 3 is to increase awareness of the training options. So if we have the training options available, we want to make sure that people actually know about them and how to find them. Goal 4 is to increase staffing capacity to ensure we have enough qualified digital skills teachers out there. And goal 5, like any good state plan, we need to establish performance measures and data outcomes. And examples of that might include using an identified assessment tool in training programs and doing an annual or biannual survey of employers. So those are the main goals. This plan came out, I think, at the end of July, beginning of August, and we've actually been making some progress in each of these areas. So we're going to talk through that now, and I'll turn it over to Christine for progress on goal 1.
So good morning again, everybody. So as Tara mentioned, goal 1 is to elevate the foundational digital literacy skill priorities across system partners. And, you know, foundational digital literacy is where Title II lives, right? So for progress towards this goal, we thought it was essential to establish a common vocabulary, you know, or a shared language so that when we communicate, we're all on the same page about what the plan means. So we looked at existing definitions across agencies and even other states, and we now have an entire glossary of terms, which can be found in Appendix A of the plan. And maybe somebody could drop the link to the plan in the chat for people. I hadn't thought of preparing that ahead of time. I can do it after my portion. So to provide an example of the importance of shared language, let's talk about the term digital literacy, which I think, you know, we use in many contexts. So in the glossary, we defined it as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information, requiring both cognitive and technical skills. So, you know, while having this common vocabulary is important, we also discussed that some of the terms may not always resonate with people. People may not intuitively know what skills are included in that. And then the other thing is some of these terms may have a negative association with them. I think, as we all know in Title II, you know, for example, when talking about digital literacy, people might not want to consider themselves as not having literacy skills. So depending on the audience, we thought it might be helpful instead to sort of lead with the skills we're talking about. We talk about skills in adult ed all the time. So for example, instead of saying, you know, do you need help with digital literacy? Maybe we change that to, do you need help with how to use your email or how to search for something on the internet? But in order to do that, we needed to define the skills. So as Tara and Erin both mentioned, we chose a focus on foundation digital literacy. So to that end, it seemed reasonable that we adopt a skill and competency framework that was developed by our PDS, our Title II PDS, which outlines the types of skills that someone should have if they're proficient in foundational digital literacy skills. This competency framework is included in the plan in Appendix B, and it's also on PA Adult Education Resources website for those of you, familiar with that. I don't know, Tara, can you show the screen with just the little screenshots? This is just a screenshot of the glossary that's Appendix A, and then maybe then, and then this is, this was the draft version of the digital literacy standards for adult learners. If you go to the PA Adult Education Resources website, they look a little different now, just formatting stuff. And it looks like Carrie has dropped a link to the plan in the chat for those of you that would like to read the entire plan. So that's information on goal number 1. I'm going to turn it back over to Tara for goal number 2.
Thanks so much. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Carrie to talk about the
okay.
map. Yeah.
Thanks, Christine and Tara, much appreciated. In addition to those standards and the definitions that Christine shared, we have really made a lot of progress to ensure that digital skills trainings are available and accessible so people know where they are. So we did sort of a study, and in this section, we're going to really take a deeper dive into the actual work done on this goal, because it's important for us to sort of report some of this progress. And in this section with the map, there are actions that you providers can take right now to help us continue to spread this work. So during this project, we worked with a contractor, Thomas P. Miller and Associates, and created an early version of a map to see where existing trainings were for low cost or free. And this was a focus on adult foundational digital literacy work. The contractor conducted desktop research, sent emails and communications, and really tried to find all of the organizations who were currently providing digital skills trainings. Those results were collected, data was plotted on a map, and we sort of analyzed what existing digital skills provision looked like in Pennsylvania. That contractor also worked with us and hosted meetings to gather critical stakeholder engagement. So we would all sort of understand the important component of this work is that what training providers were facing. So some of the top line highlights from that work were the need for mobile device and specific application trainings, in addition to some of the basics for basic laptops and desktop computer trainings. They pointed out the importance of really technical support, sometimes one-on-one for everyone. People really needed help that at a one-on-one level to get connected and troubleshoot their problems, specifically English language learners and older adults. They really saw a lot of need for one-on-one assistance. The training providers talked about their capacity needs. We certainly heard that many have unmet space needs, need for devices that are up to date and well equipped with software, and the training for teachers, because it's a constantly revolving option where everybody needs to keep up with skills, even the teachers. So also we talked about how attracting people to attend some of those formal classes is a big difficulty, because as others have mentioned, it's hard to admit that you might not know digital literacy. So it's sensitivity is really needed in marketing and advertising these classes. And also just a discussion of the barriers to get folks to attend and sign up and really embrace these classes. People may have other barriers like transportation or childcare, so that training providers really need to be able to meet people right where they are. Even signing up for the classes can be frustrating because it's an online sign up, or they have to get online in order to start the class. And the final barrier that folks really reported and talked about was reporting outcomes and consistent measurement. So a lot of that helped us to sort of continue to build on the plan and form those recommendations. Since then, our group has worked to move the data to a new map and a place where it can be updated monthly, and that is now on Open Data Pennsylvania. So what I'm going to do now is share in the chat a link to where we have a story map, which includes the map as well as information, instructions about how to use the map, and information. It's where you can see for providers a link to a form where you can update and help us to keep this map up to date, as well as it's the same page at the very bottom. It explains the background of this project and includes that link for downloading the whole plan. So what we see this story map is sort of a one-stop shop so that you can get to the map and all of the associated resources. This map we intend to update monthly. so that you'll be able to keep links up to date. We know that there are many training providers that are not yet included on this map. We were aware, even as we went through the project, that there were some that might have been missed. So we also would encourage you to take a look at that map and use then the form. So there's a form linked from that story map, but I just put a direct link to that as well, to be able to add and update your listing to the map if your organization is offering training in the digital skills adult foundational area. Then on the next slide, we show a little bit about the link, about the map itself and how it works. So this map, and it is still currently a little bit in flux. We're working on making improvements as we learn and test and use the map every day. But currently the map has multiple layers you can turn on or off by selecting the layers in the upper left-hand corner. The most important and unique data on this map is the information under digital training providers, because that's what we're collecting via the form and what was collected by the early contractor in their desk research. The other layer of data is open sources like census data, geographical boundaries, etc. There's a search feature at the top left corner where you can zoom in. If you typed in your small town, you could zoom in to a specific town or a map location, or you can use the navigation controls at the bottom left or drag your mouse to manually focus on a geographic section of the state. The legend for the map just pops up or down using that link in the lower right. And as you click on each symbol of the map, you'll see the program details, including information about the host organization, the type of class, and contact information. So you see on this slide just an example listing for a library, and it shows there's a link to the website where users can then get to learn more about training at that organization. At the very bottom of this page, there are some filters where you can filter to see classes by skill level. And remembering that this map targets foundational skills, most of the classes are at a basic level, or you can filter to see classes in a general topic area. Many of the classes or organizations reported that their class teaches in multiple areas. So if you select a filter, then you would use the clear all filter between searches or the reset button on each filter, because that will let you see just that one filter at a time being applied. The topic areas were based on the digital literacy standards that Christine mentioned, and then we also added coding because there were a few groups that were offering sort of some foundational skills in that. It's important to note that this meeting is just the beginning of opportunities to release this map more widely to a larger population, and we are hoping you will be able to help spread the news of this map and that you will use that form to update your listing. So tell your staff and your network partners about the map, as it is a tool for everyone. We really did create this map, A, as that internal, we used it to identify areas where training were needed, but B, it can be used by the public and by providers like you in adult education to help make referrals to the people you serve to the classes that are being offered. So I know this map is it will be an ongoing and continue to be updated. So please use it, let us know, and we'll be checking that form for your input soon. Thanks, everyone. I'll turn it back over, I think, to Tara.
Thank you, Carrie. So you pretty much touched on goal 3 here, to increase awareness of training options. That's what we are doing today, and with these series of meetings with our different partners that the state team is connected with. We also are making sure that we're sharing a couple of additional resources. We have a few no-cost resources online through our SkillUp PA and Power Library platforms. So that's another way people can get connected. We just want more people to know what options are out there for them. My screen stopped moving. Okay, there we go. Goal 4, we continue to work on progress with. We talked about, we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about our connection to the broader digital equity work. But, there is a lot of funding coming down through the Infrastructure Act, and that might be an area we can look at for looking at staff capacity needs. And then for goal 5, so We did an initial employer survey to help guide our recommendations and understand what the employer needs are now. We're hoping to update that survey based on what we learned from doing the first one, and maybe issue that on an annual or biannual basis to collect information to ensure that the skills that workers or that employers need are the skills that that people are finding in their trainings. And this just shows, and you'll see in the plan, there's a whole outline of the questions that we asked and the responses we got from employers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gwen Ross to talk about the connection to the bigger technology access initiatives.
Good morning. Before we close, we did want to mention how this work also fits into the state's broader digital equity efforts. As you may be aware, last December, the Broadband Authority, housed within DCED, which is the Department for Community and Economic Development, was established, and it serves as the point of contact for broadband funding and initiatives. The authority is responsible for the Infrastructure Act projects coming down through the state, and there's lots of more information on the work they are doing on their website, which I can drop in the link. Drop a link into the chat so you can connect directly to their website. There's also a link, it looks like right here on the slide, so that can take you there as well. The authority recently approved a broadband plan for the state, which is available on their website as well. And through this work, Pennsylvania has been recognized for ensuring digital literacy is a core consideration in the state broadband plan. It has been great working alongside the Broadband Authority and developing these policies and plans together. We do have someone from the Broadband Authority who serves on our state team. Ideally, as broadband access becomes new to communities, we want to make sure there is a plan for people to know how they can get support for using this new technology and also using it safely. We are excited to continue to work with the team in developing the overarching state digital equity plan, which will be happening over the next few months. We are also finalizing some communication pieces that might be of interest to our stakeholders on this call. The first one is going to be geared towards the work that we've done, our vision, policies, and the goals, and that will be really great for our stakeholders. And then we are also creating an informational piece that will be great for the end user, so those who are looking for the digital skills, how they can access them. So we should have those resources completed within, I would hope, with a holiday, probably beginning of January. So we'll make sure that we get those out to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Gwen. And although she's not on the call, Stephanie Perry at the Department of Labor and Industry is also exploring putting together a little training video or narrative to share that can accompany the map, so you can see how to use the filters and the layers effectively. So we're very excited. Just to recap, so we now have the glossary of terms, the set of standards, the interactive map defined trainings, and then our recommendations and action steps to continue our progress towards making sure no Pennsylvanians are left out of opportunities. So thanks again for taking time today to share our progress so far, and we are happy to take any questions.
Thanks, team. I dropped the broadband plan in the chat as a link, and it looks like Gwen dropped a link to the entire website for broadband in Pennsylvania. So all that information is there for you. Does anyone have any questions for the digital skills team? Comments? Feel free to unmute or drop something in the chat.
Christine, this is Tim. I have a question for you specifically around Title II.
Tim.
Just in terms of the digital literacy, because in the past there were some parameters about what we could and couldn't do with Title II funds, particularly in regards to teaching digital literacy without contextualization. What are the parameters, if any, at this point with Title II funds and digital literacy?
So I'm actually going to allow, that's a policy question. So I think Amanda Harrison is on, and I think I would turn that question over to her to answer if
Me?
she would.
There is no change to the requirements for Title II. You know, at this point, it needs to be within the context of general basic skills instruction. And I think part of the point of the map, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Tara and the group, is that will allow you to see resources that are available for kind of your standalone digital literacy training. So if you have people who come to you who only want to learn how to use the computer or develop their digital literacy skills, and they don't have the basic education skills that we are tasked with providing, you can connect them to those activities. So no, we still don't do kind of standalone, just teaching people how to use the computer. You can be more, under WIA, you kind of had to tuck it in there because digital literacy was not even within WIA. Digital literacy is considered part of workplace literacy skills and those workplace activities. So you can be more explicit about supporting your learners in using technology, but you can't just have a class that's digital literacy if those individuals don't also have a basic skills need as indicated by one of our assessments. And right now, unfortunately, there are no approved assessments that show progress in digital literacy. I know that that's something at the national level. There's state directors are talking about how there really is a need for that, but currently we don't have a way to show our mandated outcomes for digital literacy.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Tim. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, quiet group today. I want to
Can I just jump
Yes.
in? And I want to say thank you to the team for reaching out and including adult education in this, because it is so integral to our population. And our programs really are trying to integrate digital literacy development in their services. And I think including those the resource developed by our Digital Equity and Digital Learning Project.
Digital literacy and distance education. Chuck's
Project.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Chuck's project. Thank you for acknowledging the hard work that they do, because it's really good, and we're glad to see it go out to the rest of the state to inform that work.
And we just have a couple comments, not questions, in the chat, but I just thought I'd read them out loud for everybody. This is exciting from Laura Zingari. Thanks, Laura. And, Destiny Simpson is just saying thank you for your work so far, and in the future, it will be helpful for our learners. So I think everybody appreciates this work. If there are no further questions, I'll thank the team for coming and presenting. You're welcome to stay. I don't know if the rest of the webinar will be interesting for you, but you are more than welcome to stay. I'm going to take
actually, can I, Erin Donahoe, if you happen to have the ability to stay on, my next couple of slides has a little bit to do with compulsory school age. And if there are any questions, you might be better qualified to answer them. So if you have time, I'd love for you to stay on. If you don't, I can always follow up with any questions we get.
Oh no, I'm happy to stay. I doubt it'll be helpful. I doubt it'll be helpful, but I will be here.
Maybe you can at least let us know who, if there are more specific questions about compulsory school age questions, who and where the questions go to. So thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you are all safe somewhere in this very crazy weather day. The division, advisors have gotten several inquiries over the last couple of months related to services to 16 and 17-year-olds So this is not new information. This is just kind of a reminder of our eligibility requirements that come from WIOA and from Act 143, Pennsylvania Act 143, and kind of how those intersect with compulsory school age requirements within Pennsylvania. So this first slide is just a reminder about what our eligibility requirements are for federal and state funds. So an individual is eligible to participate in federally funded adult education services if they are 16 years of age and are not enrolled or required to be enrolled in secondary school under state law. And then, of course, they have an educational need. And that part that I have in bold and italicized is key because of what the change to compulsory school age that happened back in 2020 that I'm going to provide a little bit more, a couple reminders about on the next couple of slides, right? So this is a federal law, so it kind of had to cover all states, and some states have compulsory school age until 16, some until 17, some until 18. I'm not, I think Vermont allows people to attend for as long as they want to. So it varies a lot. So the federal law had to have probably a more flexible rule. And so that's why they're saying are not enrolled or required to be enrolled in secondary school under state law. Our state Act 143 says they have to be 17 or older, a resident of Pennsylvania, and not currently enrolled in a public or private secondary or post-secondary school. So those are the legislative requirements. Those are in statute. They have not changed any in the last couple of years. Next slide, please. So in Pennsylvania, the compulsory school age changed back in 2020, and it became effective with the 2020-21 school year. And some of the questions we've gotten have talked about the change because of the pandemic, and I do want to clarify that that was just coincidental. There was not a change in compulsory school age because of the pandemic or COVID. They just both happened to happen at the same time. So in beginning with the 2021 school year, the compulsory school age in Pennsylvania is 18. It starts with 6-year-olds, but we don't worry about that end of it. So an individual must remain or is required to attend school until their 18th birthday. And so I've taken this wording from a PDE website. Compulsory school age means that all children aged 6 up until their 18th birthday must be enrolled in and attend school or be doing a homeschool program. Now, Pennsylvania Public School Code allows for some exceptions, and those exceptions are listed on the PDE website. And there is a link to the PDE website there. I'm not sharing my screen, so you're not going to see this, but I'm going to bring it up on my computer so I can. Oh, thank you, Christine. So if you scroll down to under general requirements, there's something that starts with the number 1 where it says attendance. So, these items, this list are the reasons. So you can see it says the term compulsory attendance refers to the mandate that all children of compulsory school age having a legal residence in Pennsylvania must attend a day school in which the subjects and activities prescribed by the standards of the State Board of Education are taught in the English language, except in the following situations. So attendance at a private trade school or private business school continuously through the entire term congruent with the school term of the resident school district, right? So those, they may not be in a public school, but they're sending some kind of secondary school. So they would not be eligible for adult education in that case. And they have certain age requirements and approval requirements. Attendance at a school operated by a bona fide church or other religious body. So again, they're not attending public school, but they're attending a school affiliated with a religious organization. They're being privately tutored or homeschooled, which means they're meeting their secondary enrollment requirements. Enrollment in a day or boarding school. So those first 4 exceptions, they're still in school, so they're not eligible for our programming. They're enrolled in secondary school. And then there are a couple of more. But as you can see, none of those are exceptions allowing that just simply say, and thank you, Christine, you can go ahead back to the PowerPoint. The desire to attend an adult education program and prepare for and take the GED is not one of the reasons a student can withdraw from school, okay? So, you know, if you have someone who is not yet 18 coming to your program, you do want to be clear that they are, in fact, for some reason or another, not enrolled in school, right? I mean, they should be attending school. We know that sometimes they're not, and they're truants, and it would be, you know, it would be nice if we could be the ones providing them services, but you really should be working to try and get them reconnected to school.
Amanda?
Yes?
Hi, this is Kim Topper. I have situations where a parent will, in most cases, the parent is calling saying, my son or my daughter have dropped out of school. I want them to get a GED. In situations like that, we typically say, look, are they unenrolled? And if so, we need to see evidence of that.
Yes, and you do want to see evidence, because you know they really should be in school, unless they meet one of those other exceptions that allows them to not be enrolled in school. So yes. I see a question here. I'm getting inquiries from many parents who don't really understand the compulsory school age and think that the progression from public high school to online homeschool to Title II is allowed. They're actually listing our program on the withdrawal sheet for their online homeschools. I've been sending parents back to the homeschool district for guidance. Sorry, that just moved. And or letters stating that the minor is no longer required to be in a K-12 institution. And yes, that is what you need to be doing. I have another one. It says, what if we get a release letter from the superintendent or principal that releases them from their program? Yeah, if you have something from the student's home school district that indicates that they are no longer required to attend, then yes, and that they are no longer attending, yes. If they're not enrolled in secondary school or their school district isn't requiring them to be enrolled in school, then you can serve them.
Kelly Davis has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and unmute, Kelly.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. We have a situation just recently in Titusville. There were a bunch of kids who were truant, and we work in closely with the school in collaboration. And the principal actually texted me from the courtroom and asked me about our program. So we have, I believe, 4 kids right now who are in the process of enrolling in our program. But it's a court order, and they've withdrawn from school. So we do have the letters, but it's basically a court order.
So that's fine. But a student who just simply has decided that they don't want to go to school anymore and hasn't gone through any formal process with their home school district, we really shouldn't be serving. You know, you will need to refer them back to the school district And what I'll say is you are not responsible for answering questions about what a school district's options are for such students, right? That's the school district's responsibility to understand that. And I would assume they have people here at PDE, Erin, that they can be contacting if they have questions about how they're supposed to implement compulsory school age. Would that be correct, Erin? Like federal programs
Yes.
or some, one
Yes,
of the divisions in the or bureaus in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Erin just gave a thumbs up to that answer, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
So-
the other Kelly Davis has her hand raised and she has a question.
Okay.
Really more of a comment. I'm so glad that you're doing this today because what you're telling us is exactly what we've been doing. We've been giving them this information, but telling them we cannot help you make that decision. We cannot say, oh, yes, they can come to adult ed so they can drop out of school. No, we
Right.
can't do any of that. You make that decision and we just tell them they need to have conversations with their solicitor if there are really extenuating circumstances that we cannot help them make that decision. We say, pretend we're not here. What would you do? Then once you decide and we have a letter from you stating that they are not enrolled in school, then we would take them in our classes.
So we have a couple comments in the chat
Right.
and then we have another hand raised. So we can serve students who have a letter of separation from the school district in federally funded classes. That's the first question. And then Sue Klauser wanted to clarify that the court order in lieu of the school district letter is acceptable, or does she need both?
I'm going to say if you have a court order that the student is withdrawn from school and should be doing GED, that's what a lot of them say, just they should be getting their GED, then yes, I would think that was okay. I mean, as long as you have that documentation. And yes, I would say that as long as you have some kind of formal documentation that the student is not required to be enrolled in school, that yes, you can serve them with either your federal or your state funds.
And Corinne, your hand is raised. Do you still have a question that you'd like to address? Please unmute if you do.
I do, and I'm not sure if it's a question or if I'm just looking for some guidance. I'm finding that with different schools in my area, the ways the families are encountering whether or not the school will unenroll the student is very different. So
Yeah.
I'm having a bit of a confusing experience because I feel like I have some schools that are like, sure, take them, and I think that could just be a reflection on how they handle students that are challenging. And then I have other schools where it seems like they're really holding on to their students, and I just am not sure if I'm missing a piece of information as to why there would be such differences.
Thanks, Corinne.
I think, and Erin being in policy and being a little bit more familiar with the K-12 system, Pennsylvania has something like 499, 500 school districts, and I think there are a lot of very local decisions on how they handle implementing various policies and what their policies are. What they might have similar policies, but their procedures are different. So I don't think you're missing anything. I suspect that those school districts just have very different ways of handling it. So that's kind of, as long as they're, what we can't do is just say you're a 16-year-old, we don't serve 16-year-olds, but very definitely saying, hey, you're 16, 17, you're really, you really are supposed to be going to your school, and you do need to reach out to your school district to discuss what your options are before you come to our program is, I think, the best way to go. And it sounds like that's what most of you are doing. But I did just kind of want to clarify that. And it's difficult because we want to help them, right? I mean, they're not, for whatever reason, they feel like school's not working for them. And yet they still want to work towards something. Unfortunately, the way our statutes are written, we really just aren't allowed to serve them. Now, this is with our funds. If you happen to have another program that has other funding that doesn't have the same limitations on it, that's a different story. I'm really only talking about the services provided with our funds. And we have someone who says it's been very interesting this fall, getting a lot of bright seniors who are withdrawing from school district and coming for GEDs, not your typical with behavior challenges. And that is interesting. And I think some of that could be the impact of COVID and maybe students who were able to get through COVID without much of an impact on their education might just be like, I'm ready to go. And of course, the thing is, once they're 18, they are allowed to withdraw from school without any reason. So if you have 18-year-olds coming, that's fine. I mean, you still probably need to make sure that they are formally withdrawn from school for their own purposes and really for the purposes of accuracy. But those individuals are not, they're not of compulsory school age anymore. It ends on their 18th birthday.
Go ahead, Sue Klauser.
Hi, I'm seeing an increase in the number of people coming for ESL classes who are younger. We have a huge influx of Spanish speakers into Montgomery County. I don't know what it's like across the rest of the state. I assume it's similar. And I had a situation last week where I had a 17-year-old who really had no intention of going to school. She just turned 17. And she showed me a diploma, but I was fortunate to be able to connect with Norristown Area School District has a family support center, and a person over there explained to me that in this person's native country, you get a diploma when you finish middle school, and it is not a high school diploma. So that was education for me, and I was just wondering if other people are seeing that. I did say to her, I didn't have her participate in the registration, and I gave her the information to go to Norristown Area School District.
Yeah, and I, this is where I'm not an expert on the nuances of compulsory school age for individuals who are maybe temporarily in Pennsylvania, or recent those type of things. I'm just unfortunately not. I don't know enough about those. Like I said, the nuances of that to be able to be the person to provide the guidance on that. And I really do recommend that you talk to the school district, that the student's home school district, to get answers to those questions.
We have another Laura Hops, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I am new to the coordinator role as of July 1 and just wanted confirmation. We do have school districts that are sending them as a transfer to us, and I assume that adult ed is not a transfer and that we would need a withdrawal. And I think maybe it's just the logistics of that vocabulary that the schools are using the word transfer so that funding, they don't take a ding on the withdrawal. Is that something that maybe you could speak a little more about?
I don't know what the word transfer means within the K-12 system. So no, we are not an alternative education for, so a kid cannot be in one of our programs and the school district is still getting funding for that student. No, that you are correct there. Whether or not
I think it's the 180 days that it says in that PDE website exceptions. I mean, we do not offer full-time class and we don't offer 180 days.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, we definitely do not. We are definitely not one of those alternative schools that they can go to, because the key thing is it's not, like you said, it's not the 180 days, and we're not providing the services that meet the requirements of Pennsylvania code. So yeah, so your interpretation that we are not one of those and they can't just transfer them to one of our programs and have them still and have our program meet compulsory school age requirements is correct. That's not us.
Thank you. So when we're getting the proof of withdrawal, we really don't want to see the word transfer. And that's what I've been passing along to my staff.
I'm going to say yes, that's probably the case, although I don't know what that word means technically. Erin, can you help us at all with that?
No, this is news to me. I don't know if I would, like, I don't want to read too much into the word because maybe they're not really thinking
Right.
a lot about what word they're using. Like if they're saying, we're going to transfer their transcript over to you just to let you know what courses they've completed. Okay, fine. They may not mean that in any kind of technical sense. They just mean they're going to send you a transcript. So, but what Amanda said, adult education providers aren't alternative education programs. And the 180-day requirement is only part of it. I mean, it also has to do with the academic standards and the high school graduation requirements and pathways to high school graduation and high school diplomas. So there's so many reasons. So yeah, I think if they're calling it a transfer, then that is questionable. I would ask them, what do you mean by that? And what are your expectations for the educational program that the student is going to be in?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Amanda. It's Sharon Hagenberger from IU12. When they expel or want to expel a student because they're having issues in the school district, they usually have to have a plan. Either the parents have to decide, get them to go to another district, or have some kind of a alternative plan. Maybe that's what they mean, but it's not, like you said, we are not an alternative school, so they should
Thank
not
you.
be coming to us, but they might be part of an expulsion plan.
Okay.
In that
Yeah,
case, I think they should be looking at what's called an AEDY provider, which is a type of alternative education rather than adult ed. I don't know if you also offer an AEDY
No.
program.
No, that's not
Okay, I
part of our
didn't think
funding.
so. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you're communicating with the school district and you have something that seems to clearly say that we school district are no longer requiring this student, this student is no longer required to attend our school, then I think you're okay. We were just starting to get a lot of questions about it, and I, you know, I wanted to let you know kind of our perspective on this. And as long as you're communicating with the school district and there is indication from the school district that this individual is no longer obligated to attend and be enrolled in the school, you can serve them. It is good to have documentation of that. Don't just take the family's word for it, I think is what I'm saying, because they may not realize the steps that they have to take. Next slide. So this is actually 16 and 17-year-olds, not participation in adult education programming, but in taking the high school equivalency tests. So 22 PA Code 4.72 is the part of code that authorizes PDE to issue the Commonwealth Secondary School Diploma to individuals who meet certain requirements. PA Code 4.72, basically people at the age of 18 are allowed to take the test without restriction, as long as, without restriction. 16 and 17-year-olds are generally not allowed to take a high school equivalency test unless they have certain exceptions, which are listed in PA Code 4.72. And I'm going to be reading from my notes so I get this exact. Let's see, where are we here? A person 18 years of age or older is eligible for HSE testing upon request, means upon registration. 16 and 17-year-olds may qualify for high school equivalency testing upon the issuance of a court order or at the written request of one of the following: an employer who requires a high school equivalency credential for job opportunities, an official of an accredited institution of post-secondary education, which accepts applicants on the basis of high school equivalency test scores, a recruiting officer of a branch of the armed forces that requires a high school equivalency credential for entry of new recruits, or the director of a state institution on behalf of residents, patients, or inmates. The wording in 4.72 is actually somewhat outdated because it's from like the late 60s and has not been updated any. But those are the five actually ways that a 16 or 17-year-old could potentially take the high school equivalency test. Now, up until very recently, we, as the office that oversees high school equivalency testing, have always said that a person could not be enrolled in school and take the high school equivalency test except for institutionalized youth, so youth who might be in a youth detention center. With the change in compulsory school age, we started getting a lot of people who used to drop out when they were 17 and then registered to take the test and were allowed to do so because they were not enrolled. We started getting more questions, and so we checked with our legal office, and they said in a very literal reading of PA code, there is nothing that says that you cannot take a high school equivalency test while you were enrolled in school. So individuals may take the tests while they are enrolled in secondary school. However, PA code clearly says the Commonwealth Secondary School Diploma can be issued to a Pennsylvania resident who does not possess a secondary school diploma and is not enrolled in a public licensed, private, registered, accredited, or licensed non-public secondary school. So the person can take the test, but they can't get the diploma if they are enrolled in school. We are working with Diploma Center to kind of put in procedures that would allow the person to take the tests and have the scores go to Diploma Center, but would then prevent them from getting the diploma if they are still enrolled in school. Okay, so if you have heard people saying, well, yeah, now we can take the test while the kids are in school, yes, they can, but all they're doing is taking the test. They're not going to get a credential as long as they're enrolled in school. The other thing is Pennsylvania code actually says that PDE will not issue the Commonwealth Secondary School Diploma to any 16 or 17-year-olds unless unless the school district kind of authorizes that. So you might have 16-year-old and 17-year-olds who they wouldn't be in your programs because they're enrolled in school, but they're taking the test, but they're not going to get the diploma. The reason I mentioned that, and if you can go to the last slide, is there seems to be some confusion amongst parents and youth who request and are given an age waiver. It's called an age waiver. That's the process that our office uses to allow a 16 or 17-year-old to register for and take the high school equivalency test. There seem to be some parents and children, youth, who think that because they have gotten an age waiver to take the test, that they are excused from compulsory school age and school attendance. Or that because they have passed the GED or HiSET test, they no longer have to go to school. Neither of those is the case. Like, nothing related to high school equivalency testing exempts 16 and 17-year-olds from compulsory school age. Again, I don't think that directly relates to most of your students, since most of your students are, your students are not enrolled in school. But these are just some things that have come up recently. my office is getting questions, the high school equivalency office is getting more questions from school districts around, you know, these people are telling us that you say that they don't have to go to school anymore. And we're saying, no, that's not what we're saying. All we're saying is that they're allowed to take the test. Taking the test, passing the test has nothing to do with compulsory school age. So this is really mostly, all of this is more for your information to run your program. I am not expecting you to be the expert on this and to be answering questions for parents and their children who would like to attend your classes or get information. You know, you are correct in referring them to the school district, but I wanted you to have this information so that you know how 16 and 17-year-olds are impacted both by compulsory school age and participation in the program, as well as high school equivalency testing. And that is the end of my slides.
Do we have any additional questions? You know, I know we're at time, we're a little over, but if people do have questions, Sue Klauser's hand is up. Go ahead, Sue.
Yes, I'm sorry for running late, but I have a question that has to do with high school equivalency. Can a person who is not documented complete the GED and receive a PA high school diploma?
There is no immigration status requirement associated with the high school equivalency testing program in Pennsylvania.
Okay, that being said, how do they show, what ID do they show when they go and take a test?
There is information in the policy on our policy page about how people can show residency and identification.
Okay, and so that's in our PDE policy. So for adult basic ed, right?
Well, it's on the same page. So if you go to the PA, you know, our PDE website, the page that has the guidelines and all of the policies, it's at the bottom of the page. Thank you, Christine. Lots of clicking involved. It would be down at the bottom where it says H300, verification of high school equivalency test candidate identity and Pennsylvania residency. And that has a list of, you know, obviously most people use the Pennsylvania ID or driver's license, but it has a list of options when individuals do not have that.
And that's on the same page where you normally look for up-to-date guidelines and policies. It's just you have to scroll to below the fold.
Yes, Corinne, you're saying, so a 17-year-old student could be approved to unenroll from compulsory school, take HSE classes, get an age waiver, pass the GET, but still not receive the diploma until they're 18? Yes. Unless if they can get something from their school district saying PDE can issue the credential, then we can release it. But otherwise, they'll get a notice on their 18th birthday that they can get the diploma. They'll still have to answer a question whether they're enrolled or not.
So maybe that's sort of the confusion here, Amanda. Perhaps it's really two notifications that are needed. The one notification that the adult ed program needs to say, you know, from the school district saying you have approval for this, you know, this student is unenrolled, you have approval. But the approval to issue the high school equivalency is a separate or additional.
Right, yeah. And even, you know, yes. And, you know, so what you can, you know, so you might have a situation in which a kid decides to take the test, they pass the test, and then they graduate from high school, in which case they happen to have passed the test, but they never got our Commonwealth Secondary School District, and they have their school district diploma instead. You know, so then they wouldn't get our diploma, because once they have the school district diploma, we can't issue the Commonwealth Secondary School Diploma, because we can only issue it to people who do not have a secondary school diploma. Is there a specific form for them getting it would need to be a letter from the school district, generally from the superintendent. What I'll say is generally, you know, if somebody is going on to post-secondary education or employment, they would still be able to get a copy of that high school equivalency transcript, you know, a transcript that shows that they've passed the test. It would just say that they hadn't been issued a diploma yet because they weren't 18 yet. So, but they've still passed the test. They just aren't being issued the credential.
A couple
Okay,
thank yous
well,
for
thank
you,
you all
Amanda.
very much. I'm sorry?
There's just a couple thank yous for you in the chat.
Oh. Okay, well, thank you all very much. If you are traveling at all today, please be safe. And I hope you all have a very, very happy, healthy holiday season. And we'll talk to you in January. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to our presenters.